on this computer. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for our Partner Toolkit and Marketing Co-op launch. We are super excited to really kick this off. It's been, I think, a little over a year in the making, and we're really excited to have Anna from SparkLoft join us, and you all as well. So for the sake of time, we're gonna just do a quick introduction just so we know who all is on the call. And so when we do introductions, just say your name, business, where you're located, and then we'll move into the rest of the agenda for today, which is really talking about EOVA's 2024 marketing strategy and overview. Then we'll dive into the partner toolkit, and then we'll wrap up with the marketing co-op and have some times for question and answers. So if you do have questions along the way, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll kind of take a few pauses in between slides. So if there's something super timely, or if it's more of a general question, we'll capture those at the end. So with that, I'll do a quick intro for any names and faces I might not have met before, but I am Elena Carollo. I'm the Executive Director of the Eastern Oregon Visitors Association. We are the Eastern Oregon RDMO, serving an 11-county area and the 2 tribal governments there within, and I am located in La Grande. So Anna, we'll do a quick intro for you. Name, business, or who you're with, and where you're located.
Amazing. Yeah. My name's Anna Myers. I'm an account supervisor at SparkLoft Media, and we partner with the Eastern Oregon Visitors Association on all things social and marketing. And I am located in Portland.
Awesome. Well, thank you all again. And yeah, so we are going to dive right into our marketing strategy overview. And Anna, I'm gonna kick it over to you.
Happy to jump in. So hi, everybody. It seems like we have a wonderful group here today. As a reminder, we will have these documents available to you after this call as well. So really excited to dive into any questions and answers and have this just be a really kind of conversational session. But there's 2 key documents that we're going to take you through today. One is going to be the partner marketing toolkit, and then the co-op toolkit. And we'll kind of take a break between those 2, but lots of information to share. So we're really excited. Okay. So just as a quick kickoff to the marketing partner toolkit, really like the purpose of these slides moving forward and the discussion that we're going to have today is really just to bring regional partners together kind of under this regional umbrella, and really kind of provide this guidance at a regional level to the marketing strategy that we've put into place through the There's More to Eastern Oregon campaign, as well as kind of like an overview of our year-round marketing efforts across the region. So the goal here really is to have everybody kind of get on the same page and feel really collaborative when it comes to these marketing efforts, to be able to work together to really kind of bring this cohesive message of Eastern Oregon together while still sharing the really unique offerings that each person on this call can bring to the region as well. So with that, I think diving in, we'll want to give a bit of background into kind of our strategic vision that really kicked off in 2023 and has been our guiding light through 2024 so far as well. So with that, there were 4 key goals that we really have had in mind across our marketing plans. One is to reach potential visitors, pique curiosity, and of course, inspire visitation to the region. And in doing that, what we want to do is really highlight the range of offerings that Eastern Oregon has to offer and make sure that we're talking to the right audiences. We'll dive into audiences in just a few slides. Within that, there's this More to Eastern Oregon campaign that we're really kind of framing a lot of our messaging through, both visually through a lot of our marketing materials and the way that we're talking about the region as well. And really with the ultimate goal of focusing on a deeper education for visitors about the region and its 4 subregions, so that there's kind of this clear connection to what's available throughout the region and the diversity of experiences there. So we're calling this the situation, but this is really just kind of like what our research about the region uncovered as a whole. So when we looked at data, particularly from Google search trends related to Eastern Oregon as a whole, it really suggested and showed us that people that were searching for Eastern Oregon were searching really broad topics. For example, things to do in Eastern Oregon. Okay, like that's great. We're glad that people are searching for Eastern Oregon. But when we maybe compare it to regions like the Willamette Valley, for example, those search terms kind of showed us that there is a deeper familiarity with specific things to do in that region. For example, search terms popped around specific hotels or wineries and activities. So really what that tells us is that while people are still searching for Eastern Oregon, there's a big level of education that we need to do and inspiration that we need to do to make sure that visitors, potential visitors, feel equipped with enough activities, places to stay, and things to do that will hopefully lead to a longer booking time in the region. So really kind of personalizing and creating really unique storylines that will hook people in to booking their trip. I mentioned earlier that we would kind of be diving into audiences. This is really kind of where we dive into that. So when we think about those that we are trying to reach with our marketing, our paid media across our social channels, that really falls into three key buckets. The first is looking at those travelers that are within the state of Oregon. Something that I love about living in Oregon is how willing people that live here are to explore their own state. So we really do still want to focus on those who are up for an adventure to Eastern Oregon that are coming from within our state boundaries. Next, we're looking at flyer drive markets. So for example, like a Boise or a Spokane, who will road trip here and maybe will stay for a bit longer, an extended weekend, things like that. And then of course, really what we're using too is interest-driven targets. And we layer this into a lot of our paid media as well, but knowing the diverse kind of cast of experiences that you can have in Eastern Oregon, it's really important that we speak to those interests specifically as well. So we can target those who have interests in national parks, outdoor recreation, foodies, cyclists, all those different pieces, those interest peaks for Eastern Oregon as well. And within that, we've also determined a few subsegments within those audience as well that we think that content will resonate really well with. So within those broader audience groups, other groups that we're looking at are female travelers. These are those who are interested in solo traveling. They take a lot of maybe like shorter weekend trips, but they're interested in cultural, adventure, nature experiences. Millennials are also an important subgroup of that. So these are really purpose-driven travelers, sometimes bringing their families, but really wanting to feel immersed in communities. And then bold boomers, what a fun title there. But these are people with definitely more time on their hands. They can book travel a little more spontaneously. They'll stay for a little bit longer. They want relaxing trips, but also are really interested in the activities that the region has to offer. So you might be looking at this and thinking, well, what does this mean for me? But I think everybody on this call really understands, their audience better than anyone else. And so I think as you look through these audience segments, our target audiences, just think about perhaps like what you're offering and who you're offering might speak to the most. Your offering might resonate better with certain audiences than others. This definitely isn't a place where we're saying you need to try and reach everyone with every message. It's kind of about finding that right niche and being able to speak to the audience that will resonate best with your organization.
Anna, before we advance, can you just note on the partner action what those call outs kind of pertain to? And
yes, so I think you'll see this box at the bottom of a lot of slides. This is kind of a place where if you're kind of looking back at this deck as you move forward, definitely pay attention to those. These are places where you can really like tap into each of these kind of tips and strategic messages and apply that to your own organization. Cool. So not only is it important to reach the right audience, but it's reaching the right audience with the right message, as we love to say in marketing. So we with Eastern Oregon have really identified these 3 key messaging buckets that have really shaped our social calendars, editorial plans, et cetera, and making sure that all of our content is really equally focused on a lot of these areas. And, you know, your organization might not, again, fall into all of these, but these are areas that we are really focused on at a regional level. So the first being outdoor recreation. So this is showcasing, obviously, the outdoor natural beauty of the destination. We know that Eastern Oregon has an abundance of that. We also focus on culture and heritage and culinary and agritourism. Below that, we have just a few examples broken out by subregion. This is by no means an exhaustive list. Again, you are your own expert in your field. So I think in the partner action piece down here is think about what you contribute to, you know, the ecosystem of Eastern Oregon and maybe where that falls within these buckets. And how that resonates with different audience segments. I think something also that we like to keep in mind, particularly from a marketing standpoint and sharing about Eastern Oregon, is showcasing well-known favorites. So, you know, for example, Wallowa Lake, everybody loves Wallowa Lake, right? But what are some other things that fall within these pillars that are maybe up and coming or hidden gems that will really like spark that excitement and create kind of an urgency to visit, perhaps? Hidden gems, if you will. Elena, anything else to add here?
No, I think you covered it.
Perfect. So this kind of through our audience research and developing our messaging pillars, this is really our guiding strategy statement for our marketing plan, which is get our Oregonian and Flyer Drive audiences who are interested in Eastern Oregon's backcountry adventures, rich cultural heritage, and extraordinary personal experiences to consider Eastern Oregon in their future travel plans by sharing exciting and alluring stories, highlighting the subregions and their different offerings. So as you kind of think about your own marketing plans, definitely refer back to this in terms of key audiences, key messaging pillars to see where you and your destination or organization can fit in. Perfect. This next section is just a quick little piece about how our teams, both at a regional level and with our partners, can really work together as like a baseline starting point for sharing assets. So from a regional standpoint, in order for the Eastern Oregon Visitors Association to really tell an effective story, it's really critical that we partner with all of you to make sure that in terms of assets, everything is feeling really aligned and updated. We know from our audience through different search tactics on social, there's a lot of different ways to find out information. And we just want to make sure that all of those pieces are consistent and aligned. So a key example here is that Boardman River Lodge and Cabins shared image assets with EOVA, and really kind of to get a broader understanding of how those assets are used. It was updated in the business listing and Travel Oregon's database. The images were used in a content story, featured on the website and in a newsletter. So by sharing assets kind of back and forth as teams, this is a really crucial part to just make sure like and have an understanding that your assets have potential for additional reach. And so we're more than happy to kind of partner with you to make sure that we have a great library of those assets. Elena, anything on here before I move on?
No, just a quick note in the chat. I dropped in what the hard link is. So this is just a landing page on EOVA.com on where you can update your business listing. If you're not sure what your business listing currently looks like, you can go to visiteasternoregon.com and do a quick your business search in the search bar and see how your listing pops up. You can also do the same thing on traveloregon.com. If there's edits or updates or you're not there at all, we can get that fixed for you using that link in the chat.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And as we start talking more kind of about social channels and how kind of the inner workings of how a partnership works there as well, like as the social agency for Eastern Oregon Visitors Association, like we are more than happy to take any assets that you want to pass along. I think just from an asset generation standpoint, like being able to share photos and videos outside of the business listing setting is always more than welcome. We love having as many assets as we can, particularly for social newsletter content, things like that. Great. So with that, I'm going to jump in quickly to just a few social platforms and really how we are looking at particularly Facebook and Instagram. Those are our most used social platforms. I'm assuming that on this call, there's a good presence across these platforms, but I think just kind of using this as more of like a grounding exercise to like the particular role that each of these platforms play in the ecosystem is very important. I know that sometimes having the ability to post multiple times a day on multiple platforms can feel overwhelming. So I guess with that, just keep in mind, like, what is the content that you have to offer, and strategically, maybe what platform makes the best sense for you if it's not both. So with that, we'll jump into Facebook. Facebook is a really like proactive platform, a big focus on branding, but I think the best use for Facebook as opposed to Instagram, which we'll get into in a minute, is really a place to share event promotion, group discussion, general updates. Meta as a whole, which encompasses Facebook and Instagram, has a lot of really advanced targeting options. So as a whole, like if you're considering platforms to use, Facebook and Instagram, especially for paid media, are a really great option. We see in general, just as learnings from our agency, that Facebook does tend to skew quite a bit older, but audiences tend to be, those who are on Facebook tend to be very involved on the platform. On this channel, we like to say that we want to be really intentional with every post. So make sure to strike a balance between iconic content, whether that's user-generated content or owned assets, sharing new and notable experiences. And most of all, Facebook is a really great place to drive traffic to a website, more so than Instagram, for example. There's a lot more integration for direct links, things like that. So it's a really good place to get your audience really involved, particularly if you're asking them to click out of the social setting. So you'll see another little partner action box here. So some ideas for your Facebook, if you're looking to bolster that a bit, is to share web articles from your site that mention you or local business partners. This is a great place to share events, promotions, new openings, and highlight the beauty of your region through UGC. But I think something that's really great about Instagram and Facebook is that if something's performing really well on one, feel free to cross-post it on the other. Visuals, always, high quality visuals always work really well across both platforms. Cool. Moving on to Instagram. Instagram is now really evolved into a video first platform. I think there's been a huge evolution over the last few years with the introduction of Reels. But the way that we really like to think about Instagram is a place to build affinity and really kind of do that community building for your brand. Instagram has a lot of different opportunities for showcasing creative, from Instagram stories to feed posts to Reels. But I think the key thing to keep in mind is that it's such a visual first platform that really needs to lead the way. So in terms of partner action here, make sure that you're sharing those compelling, high quality images in feed. I know that Reels can seem a bit daunting, but the great thing is that you can now create video content within the platform. No need for any other like editing software. And what we found is that something as easy as a 5 to 10 second clip that's a single panning view with some compelling text or a prompt for engagement in the comments can also drive just as much as engagement as any other post. So would just say that test and learn on Instagram. It's a great place to do that, particularly with video content. And then if you do want to share links, as I mentioned, Facebook is definitely the platform for that. But in stories, there is an opportunity to have like a link button. So if you're going to share a link in Instagram, definitely do it in Instagram stories. Cool. And then as far as just other best practices and thinking where to start, we have some easy like tips and tricks to kind of start to bolster that social presence and feel more connected within the region. So following best practices and guidelines just really ensures that everything feels cohesive and up to date for travelers. Again, I sound like a broken record, but you know your own business, destination, organization better than everyone else. But here are just like a few tips to get started to feel more connected. The first tip is to follow key partners. This sounds kind of basic and silly, but I think potential travelers are really they're in a discovery mindset. And I think especially as social becomes inherently more search focused, it's easier and easier to go down different rabbit holes of partners and different organizations within the region. So I think when you think about kind of your presence on social media, make sure that you're following, this state level Travel Oregon for like content ideas, seasonal messaging. Make sure you're following Eastern Oregon Visitors Association. Also making sure that you're partnering and following local businesses. This is a really great way to keep a pulse on local events. Also, I think what's really great about social now is the ability to share information that's not always ownable to you, right? Like if you are a hotel, for example, and there's, a restaurant in town that has, a brand new restaurant in town, it's really great to be able to like co-elevate partners by sharing content and getting that word out across multiple channels. So I think that is a really great way to kind of build that community within the region as well. And then also local creators. So photographers and influencers are really great resources for content, not only to kind of understand what they're doing and how they're promoting the region, but also to kind of understand, like from an asset generation standpoint, like, is there a way to partner together moving forward? So partner action, follow Eastern Oregon, reshare things that Eastern Oregon creates around your region. And we'll kind of get into that back and forth in a few slides. But yeah, just a super easy way to kind of create that back and forth with other partners across the region and get increased visibility. The second tip here is staying active and engaged. As I mentioned, ideally you're posting all the time, but we know that's not always the reality of things. It can be a lot, but I think something that's really easy is resharing content. So it's a really great way to kind of fill your calendar with minimal effort and little planning. So if you're thinking like, what should I reshare? We kind of go by 3 ground rules here, is making sure that it feels really relevant to what you're talking about naturally on your channel, making sure it's timely with local events, and also inspirational. Again, the goal on social is to always be scroll stopping. So I think with that, a really easy way to start sharing content back and forth is tagging # Eastern Oregon. on our end, we are always kind of looking out for hashtags and user-generated content or opportunities to share. Feel free to always send us a DM on Instagram with any new content or events happening. We'd be more than happy to review and see if that makes sense to share on our channels as well. And you can do this on your own channels too. If you kind of put, feel free to put a call to action out to your users to help you generate content. We'll talk about UGC in just a little bit, but there's lots of ways to reshare and generate content for your channel that doesn't require you to create assets yourself, which is great. Keeping the conversation going, that's tip number 3. So community management is also a really key piece of social presence. As it says here, audiences no longer see social media as a way to just engage with friends and family. It's a way for them to have a really one-to-one touch point with brands or destinations to get answers. So I think having a lot of like proactive engagements is really helpful. For example, drive conversation with your content. In the partner action box, it says things like, what's your favorite summer hike in Eastern Oregon? Like really kind of driving that proactive engagement is going to help build community and keep the conversation going through reactive engagements. So responding to comments, keeping the conversation growing, building that affinity. This is a really good place to build community and make people feel kind of like rewarded for engaging with your brand and feel that closeness. And then finally, as I mentioned, leaning into user-generated content. This is a really great way to fill up your social calendars without having to shoot assets yourself, which is great. UGC, don't be afraid of it. It's wonderful. As I mentioned, with the increased search functionality across a lot of platforms, it's easier and easier to find really relevant user-generated content. So we do that by searching for hashtags, locations, kind of back to that tip number 1. What are your partners posting, local businesses, and tags to your account? Of course, there are some general guidelines that we like to keep in mind of making sure that it feels really cohesive with your brand, is really scroll stopping and beautiful, and then sharing that to your account. But of course, make sure that you always have approval before you post user-generated content. But that doesn't have to be a really hefty process. Really just getting a simple yes in the comments will do for sharing across social channels. And if you want to share it across additional channels, just make sure you get that permission in writing as well. And then this is kind of a quick slide, but just selecting UGCs. I think feel free to take a look at the Eastern Oregon or Travel Oregon Instagram accounts for inspiration, but just for some best visual practices. I think, as we always like to say, like, give a real sense of place and what that feeling evokes being in that space, in that place as well. Cool. I'm going to take a quick pause in case anybody has any questions before we dive into the marketing co-op.
And while people think of a question, if you have one, just to really summarize and reiterate that slide deck is part of the toolkit. So that will be just like a standalone independent document. And we'll be switching into the marketing co-op in just a moment. But yeah, really excited for that toolkit just to really elevate what we're doing, and yeah, just like good reminders and takeaways. So any questions, or if you don't want to present to the group, you can also drop it in the chat.
I had this. I'm super excited. Thank you for doing this today. On the slide where it was showing each of like Oregon's Rugged Country, John Deere River Territory, Northeast, Southeast. One of my questions is on the culinary and agritourism one, under the John Deere River Territory section of that, it had the grain bins featured on that. And is there a guest experience? I am not familiar with one where there's an opportunity for visitors to have an experience specifically like with that process? I mean, so we typically send all of our, well, not typically, we send all of our visitors that are coming through the gateway of Cottonwood Canyon to the Sherman County Historical Museum to get the you know, the story on what the green is, and the ranches and farms in that area. But is there a specific guest experience for that?
It's a great question. I would have to go back. So a lot of that information was pulled from when we did what we called like discovery calls at the subregions. And so
Okay.
I think those are some of like the themes and topics that came up, but I would really have to go back and look to see what the specifics were. And
Yeah,
anything.
the reason I bring that up is years ago with the Eastern Visitors Guide, there was a epic photograph of the John Day River from a viewpoint in Gillum County that only has private access. And so we were promoting in the magazine an experience that wasn't accessible to visitors.
Right.
And so just, yeah, as we're developing all of this, making sure that it is a visitor opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. We can follow up about that, and depending on that, we are happy to remove it. So there's no miscommunication there for sure.
Dan, I see your video.
Yeah.
You have a question?
I started my video. I got a question. I'm just sort of curious, like how much direct conversation does Eastern Oregon Visitors Association have with like prospective travelers? Like, does that happen a lot, or
Like via our social platforms?
via anything? Yeah, I guess I'm curious, like, say if you reshare content of ours, like, are there then conversations happening, or yeah, and like, because this whole new thing of people finding destinations through Instagram and social platforms, and like, and then I guess follow-up question, like, is there any tracking that can be done to see if people are actually coming through like their interactions with social media?
Yeah, I can answer that a bit. So as far as like Eastern Oregon's touch points at the regional level, there is active community management happening on the channels every day, whether that's like in the comments, in direct messages. I would say, which is a great thing to bring up, is like we welcome by any means, like for example, if we were to reshare Go Wild's content, if you want to be an active participant in that conversation as well, like we definitely welcome that. It doesn't just have to happen at the regional level on the regional level content, right? Like if we're resharing content and that's kind of a partnership that we establish, we would love to have you engaging with that content as well. Something that's a little tricky on the social end is that social definitely acts as a place mostly for inspiration and trip planning. But from a tracking perspective, we are a bit limited. So really kind of where that starts and ends is all kind of based on the integration on any like websites. So for example, we can track traffic to the website, but beyond that or beyond those pages, it's really difficult for us to track just from a social perspective. There's kind of like a lot of walls up just from privacy concerns about how far platforms can track you, unfortunately. But we really can see site volume and how many clicks we're driving. That is a really good indicator of how content is resonating. And then also we do have presence across like Google, so we can really understand what kind of volume search terms are generating and things like that. So,
and I would add too, I mean, like with the traffic to the website, we haven't done a recent call to action, but for our visitor guide specifically, but I do know Brittany, who's also on the call, she processes our individual visitor guide requests. And we saw an increase in those like this quarter. So that's more anecdotal. I need to do a little more digging on like, you know, where are they coming from to like, you know, request those. But so yeah, I would say there's different ways, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's helpful or if you, not as concrete maybe as you're wanting, Dan.
No, that's good. I just curious, and then just sort of a follow up and recap for us, for partners to share content, whether it's social or a press release or what have you. Like, who should our contact be? I mean, I guess on like say Instagram, we can tag you or hashtag. But but say content that's not like, yeah, like a press release, who should we be sending things like that to? Or say like we have a bunch of great photos and we, want to throw them out there. You,
Send them to
Elena?
me. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool.
But yeah, I'll be behind the social channels. So if there's anything you want to share, like we are on the lookout from partners. Definitely our ears perk up to that. In addition to kind of all the users on the platform too. But yeah, we're definitely in the DMs and all of that. So feel free to send us a message for anything social. So
Cool, thanks.
amazing.
And I had one other question. How many hashtags is too many hashtags?
That's a really great question. And one that's a little fluid, I would say. I think something that like we would really advise is to like, we've kind of made this formula where it's like maybe have like anywhere between 1 and 2 kind of brand specific hashtags. So like hashtag Eastern Oregon, hashtag something that's related to your brand. That's really good for like content generation. But then from a search capacity, like keep in mind that people are also searching search terms as well. So we would recommend anywhere from like 1 to 2 kind of like branded hashtags, and then maybe like 2 to 3 search specific hashtags. So depending on what your organization is, for example, if it's like an outdoor, like tour guide, for example, you would say something like summer hikes, summer adventures, things that are like more related to what people's search behavior might be. I definitely wouldn't say like add a billion hashtags. I think anywhere in like maybe like the 4 to 5 range feels really good. But what I would also say is that we are kind of in this era of becoming less dependent on hashtags and more dependent on like information rich captions. So I would also say like, feel free to, especially with video content, people are going to watch your video and not really pay attention to the caption as much. But what you can do is include a lot of information in the caption, because the platform will pick up on those keywords within the caption to share your video with others. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely.
Yeah.
And with the brand specific ones, would you recommend that that's built into the copy and then the additional hashtags dropped into the comments? Or do you feel like that's really shifting back that all hashtags should be in the copy and not adding additional ones for the search mechanism into the comments?
I think it's kind of different for every organization. Like I typically, like when I'm developing social content for clients, I just include all of it in the caption and not so much in the comments. I don't know if there's like a proven difference between those.
What annoys you though?
I would say I usually keep the hashtags out of the comments.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes. Because I think when I go to the comments, just as like anecdotally as a social user, like I'm there to see what other people are talking about, not necessarily any additional information from the brand, if that makes sense.
Yep, absolutely. And then with all of the phenomenal, everything that you're providing us, is there going to be an opportunity to also have like a best practices that would cover some of these topics as we're...
Yeah. Elena,
Yes, okay.
are you taking notes?
Yes, I am.
Oh, sorry,
A
my camera's
follow-up
not working.
combo.
I would hold up my notebook for you and so that you could see all. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
fabulous. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely chat more about that. I think we live and breathe social, so we have a lot of best practices when it comes to platform specific ones. So we'll be more than happy to chat with Elena about any next steps there for sure.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. For the sake of time, we'll move to the co-op piece, and Anna, we might go through these a little more quickly.
For
But
sure.
I think, Anna, if you're available, we could stay on a few minutes after one, for questions. But anyway.
Definitely. Yeah, we should
co-op.
be able to move through this pretty quickly. But essentially kind of following up on the partner marketing toolkit, we're super excited to announce the launch of the co-op program. So I think really the goal here is to make sure that all of the partners across the region are feeling really supported, depending on what individual needs are. So we really just want to support partner efforts to ladder up to this more cohesive messaging plan. What we're going to go through now is kind of like a tiered approach to the co-op program, but I just want to like caution that like, do not like take this all with a grain of salt. I think again, like we are super flexible to discuss what your needs are. So we don't want to feel like anybody is locked into a certain budgetary amount or is limited by what types of content we can do. This is really just a starting point to start to wrap your head around. So working together, we have outlined some general, as I mentioned, tiers of investment that will allow us to customize plans for any kind of co-op participation. This should feel best suited to whatever you need, and we're happy to work together to suit those needs. And it might feel a little daunting to start down this co-op journey, but I want to assure everybody that it is as simple as 4 steps to getting things off the ground, which is great. So kind of really where this partnership starts is Elena and I will kind of be the gatekeepers of the co-op, if you will be your first touch point. But really what we want to do is really just have our partners share really what your goals are and what you're hoping to get out of this co-op. From there, what SparkLoft will do on my side is we'll really kind of take what we've learned from you, turn that into kind of more of a plan based on that call, and then present that back to you. We can be really flexible, have a lot of conversations about whether you feel like this suits your needs or if there are any refinements that we need to make. We'll finalize a plan and a budget, gather any materials for onboarding or assets that we might need. And then the co-op partnership begins. Easy peasy. We're very excited to work with you. Now I'm just going to kind of jump into, this was kind of a sudden transition, but I think what I would love to do is just kind of give an overview. Again, these might not be in the wheelhouse for your needs. Maybe some of them are, and you might see some of these creative executions and say, oh my gosh, I would love to do that. So this is really just to kind of get the creative juices flowing to think about how you would like your brand, organization, destination to start to be represented throughout this co-op program. So the first kind of creative piece that we want to talk about is info carousels. These allow for creating content, static content in the feeds that allows you to provide a lot of information with just a few swipes. This is really great if you have a lot of photo assets or specific messages to share. Here's an example that we created with Eastern Oregon in there. There's more to Eastern Oregon branding, but as you can see, it really keeps people in the platform and can provide itineraries, specific points around safe travel, things like that, but works really well for photo-rich assets. The next one is custom TikToks and Reels. So as we know, video is dominating social media. So this is also something that we can work with you on. These videos can really come to life with owned assets or bringing UGC together in one place to tell a story. So we can definitely support in this realm of creating video first content very native to the platform. Similarly, if there's something like from a video perspective that you're hoping will feel a little more branded, maybe can live on social, can live on other platforms as well, we can also create a highlight reel that highlights your destination or business that uses existing assets. And again, this is something that maybe can live outside of the social sphere as well, and can be kind of like a multi-purpose video to share more about your brand. Next, of course, we have influencers. Influencers are a big part of social. So as part of this co-op, we definitely want to have that be a touch point if that makes sense for your brand as well. We'll definitely like work through what a type of itinerary or that storyline would be with an influencer, but SparkLoft does a lot of influencer management, so we're no stranger to kind of briefing in influencers on particular stories and helping kind of guide that journey throughout the region. Next is asset generation. I know a lot of these creative deliverables kind of hinge on having assets, but if you aren't starting in a place where you have a ton of assets to begin with, that's also something that we can help with as well in terms of coordinating photographers, creating a visual storyline, and kind of telling that cohesive visual story. SparkLoft can certainly help coordinate that as well, and can be really specific to the needs of your business or region. And then finally, this is a little bit outside of the creative realm, but we know that paid media is also very important for getting that incremental reach, getting your brand out to people that may be more unfamiliar and reaching a new audience. So we also have paid media plans that we're happy to work through to determine objective and put together some ads and audiences for your team as well. Perfect. This last slide is just a quick example of how some of those creative elements might play into these tiers. But again, I don't want to focus on this too much because we know every destination in business is going to have a different need. But this can just give you kind of a broad idea of how these things can play into different buckets within those tiers. Cool. That was really fast. I'm sorry that I hurried through that. I was looking at the clock, but I think all that is to say, like, definitely reach out. We're very excited to just kind of like explore what opportunities are available and see what works for you. Okay, we made it. Thanks for listening to me talk for that long.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anna. Any questions specifically on the co-op or kind of next steps or anything for Anna? Or just generally thoughts, feedback, questions, concerns?
I was going to see, has EOVA ever done any like giveaways with all their partners just to help push everybody's social media? I know a lot of times just with local markets, it's easy to get everybody to donate some like one piece of their product. And that helps track a bunch of people across to, you know, obviously to link, follow, share each other's businesses. So kind of all ships are raising together. And then we can kind of track that. I don't know how much y'all look into Google Analytics, but be able to track that through how many people are actually linking to your website and then clicking over to us.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Since I've been with EOVA, we have not done giveaways. But I know, yeah, Anna, do you have any kind of good anecdotes on giveaways?
Yeah, I haven't done, yeah, as Elena said, I haven't done any through Eastern Oregon, but I have done in like from a Travel Oregon capacity giveaways. And not only is it good for tracking traffic, but I would say that giveaways are a really great opportunity to get email signups for newsletters and those kinds of things, especially if it's different partners coming together. So yes, from a tracking perspective and just kind of getting potential visitors into that next stage of consideration, I would say like giveaways always tend to do pretty well. But yeah, I don't know if that's answered your question, but in my experience, haven't done anything with Eastern Oregon yet.
Okay. I was just seeing some like simple, easy task or easy things we could do as like an entire group for Eastern Oregon that would just work for everybody. That also would be obviously like minimal to no cost at all. Those things work super well. And I just wanted to see if that was a possibility for the future.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm curious. I mean, if everyone wants to raise a virtual hand, if giveaways are of interest, if you know how to do the raise hand. Sometimes there's like a new feature if you just raise your hand and hold it there. Now it's not going to do it on my screen, but or you can drop in the chat. Oh, I got a thumbs up from Kara. Cool. Okay. Thanks for the reinforcement, Kara. And great question, Patrick.
Delighted.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions? Don't be shy. I'm really bad at just letting there be silence.
I'll chime in. This is Dan
Yes, go
again.
Dan.
And sorry again, backing way up, but SparkLoft is sort of just social, right? Like we're not digging into like Google ad campaigns with like this partner buy-in kind of thing, or like I don't know, like traditional media.
Yeah, so we definitely play into the SEO space, if that's, I guess, SEO. We play in the Google arena, if that's something that you're interested in, for sure. We do primarily like ad buys through Meta, TikTok, Pinterest, LinkedIn, kind of like whatever social platforms. But yes, we can play in the Google space as well, for sure.
And just
Okay.
to expand too, Dan, I mean, with our contract with SparkLoft, we have done some paid placement where SparkLoft has designed, you know, the ad that's in the same look and feel of some of our social stuff and like connecting in that way. So I think that's something too, like if there's specific questions like of assistance needed, like just having that conversation with SparkLoft on like, you know, what's within the realm or not. Again, that's where it's like, when we really were talking about these tiers and the different investments and what to include, it's really kind of, they're just like samples, ideas, like it's not limited by what's listed in that. So if there are things you're interested in, like I said, I think it would just be worth having that kind of one-on-one to dive a little deeper.
Right. I guess, yeah, because for me, I'm just, when I look at my own business, sometimes I'm not sure how much social media really gets me like a new client. And you know, part of that's probably because I just hate doing it. I don't do it a ton. But like for me, I look at like, yeah, like a reporter coming out and writing a story for Go Wild or something like that, or like my newsletters get me more business than social media. But I don't know, Anna, if you have any just thoughts on that. Like,
Yeah.
maybe I'm just too old school, or I don't know, you know.
Obviously, I'm very pro-social, but I think with that though, something that I also want to keep in mind that like maybe isn't part of those like flashier creative deliverables, but something that SparkLoft also offers is like ongoing community management as well. So if social is a channel where you're saying like, I don't feel like I'm getting a lot of ROI from that channel, like maybe it's something where like community management can come into play, where if like you don't necessarily have time to manage the channels, but being more active on the channels and like engaging with communities would feel beneficial. That's also something that we can work through. And very similarly, like I agree, like organic social can be a really difficult place to like feel like there's significant traction, but paid media is really a place where that is probably where we will have more like data and analytics to back up any kind of lift there. So I think those are kind of two areas to explore, kind of depending on what your needs are. I think paid media, just because of its ability to feel really targeted and not just reach an audience that you've been reaching, can feel like a good way to get that incremental lift. Yeah, for sure.
Thanks.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on all of the national days of like doing postings that are like, for example, today it would be I am working on a reel. Well, I'm not doing it while I'm listening to this because I'm focused, of course, and taking notes. Okay, I might be thinking about it. Today is National Ag Day. So Agriculture Day. So it would be awesome today, like to feature the farm trails for Eastern Oregon. Because that would be that would be a great one we'd be able to share and then promote all of Eastern Oregon. My question with that though is I see so many postings on Insta and on Facebook that are specific to that and so I was just wondering if you feel like the audiences are becoming fatigued with that, or if is it an easy, fun way to participate in conversation based on, yeah. Okay, I feel like I've over asked the question now, Miss
No,
Anna.
I'm totally following you. I would say, in my experience, I have seen a lot of brands do it in a way that feels almost like opportunistic, but there's also like a really great way to do that that feels very natural. I will say, for your specific example, highlighting farm trails, which is a messaging priority across a lot of the state, you know, like that feels incredibly natural and like a good opportunity to share that. Would I say post for National Waffle Day? I don't know. Probably not. And I would say like, that's not necessarily a social strategy that I would say promote, but if there's a really inherent like tie-in and connection with messaging, I just think like my greatest point of advice there is like, yes, users are very quick to spot that and it will feel kind of gimmicky. But like the example that you shared, I am behind that one in particular.
And I think if it, yeah, I mean, really connects to the brand and like is more, like Anna said, more like kind of that natural and kind of like authentic, right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
My
I
two cents.
definitely wouldn't use it as like an ongoing strategy, more so if the opportunity arises with really good assets and messaging, then I would say go for it.
Awesome. And I just want to flag it is a little after 1. So we have had a few people drop off. But I mean, I think Anna, you have a little more time.
Yeah, I don't have
if
a
there's
hard stop.
questions. So we don't want to halt the questions. But yeah, just want to thank everyone. And if you do need to silently step away, go for it. So
Kara, I'm excited to see that reel though.
Thank you. They're out tagging cabs right now, so they're sending me photos. Like they're all action shots, but Brett, who has been with us for it'll be 11 years this June, his expressions are priceless, and I don't know that they're always interpreted. So it'll be awesome to see what the comments are.
awesome. And just remember, hashtag Eastern Oregon.
Yeah.
That is going to be my #1 hashtag.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, feel free if you don't want to ask your question to the group, feel free to drop it in the chat. But just to summarize as well, we will be getting both the partner toolkit and the marketing co-op on EOVA.com. And we'll share out the resources via our industry e-news. So you'll have all of those links when they are live on the website. But yeah, we really appreciate you all joining us today and for the great questions. And if you have questions, you know, that you think of later, here is both my email and Anna's email. And then if you do want, are really interested in the co-op, just reach out to both Anna and I, and we'll get that ball rolling. So, yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Really
Thanks so much,
appreciate it.
Anna.
Yeah.
Yeah, good to see you. We'll see
Yeah.
you.
See you in April.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Safe travels.
Cool. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.